And I know, Linda, because I was one.
You were one.
I were one.
Well, you kind of
still am.
I was going to say, wait a minute. That's called DJ here.
Yeah. Well, when I first started in the radio biz.
Which stands for disc jockey.
Disc jockey.
In case you don't know when you're old.
And I jocked discs.
Don't, giggles are right there behind it. It could be, it could turn into
my first
30 minutes of giggling and tears and laughing and everything else here.
We had a great big board, and we had the triple-decker cart machine was right here.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of reel-to-reel machines mounted into the cabinet here, and then on our right was the 2 turntables.
Uh-huh.
And then the back wall of the studio was all records.
Oh, yeah.
And
those were called 45s.
45s.
In the day, and they were great.
The lower boxes had the albums. Like we had a big band show on Saturday nights. Where did we get the music for the big band show? Well, somebody had ordered the Reader's Digest collection of all the songs from the big band era.
Yeah.
So we had 3 or 4 or 5 of those big cardboard boxes that you opened up, and it had 4 or 5 albums, and they were organized by years and had all that on there. So for the big band show, you'd grab and say, okay, we're going to go back to 45 this year.
Yeah.
And play all the records.
Well, you talk about a playlist, because you always knew, because the radio station had stacked up the 45s and they played them, it's just like they dropped this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. And then it seemed like they just lifted it up and started over, because your brain got to know what the next one was in one note.
Yep.
They're playing this, It's like mix them up once in a while.
Yeah. Well, our professional broadcast turntables, you couldn't stack like that.
Yeah, it was
one at a time.
Yeah.
And you could put the 45, and you had to get the little the center of the turntable was recessed to where, and then the center post was big enough for the 45, so that if you put the 45 on, it just laid lower in the turntable than the album. And then if you put the album on there, the rest of the turntable was raised, and so the album would sit there, in the pin above it was smaller. So you didn't have to put the little inserts or put the little piece over the center post if you had a 45. It just, the turntable was sculptured to accommodate either the 45 or the album.
Yeah.
And but we didn't have switches wired up for the turntables. So the turntable had one switch that was the speed, and then the other switch was the on and off.
Yeah.
And you had to reach all the way back here like this to turn the back turntable on. So somebody had cut a hole in the counter, 2 holes in the counter, and they'd gone to Radio Shack and bought a couple of little toggle switches, on-off switches, and they'd wired them up. Well, it wasn't done by the engineering staff. It wasn't professionally done. It wasn't the proper interface. And
but did it work?
It did, except for the one night that I was in here and I bumped the underside of the counter, and I accidentally crossed the 2 wires together.
Uh-oh.
And there was a poof, poof, and then it went dark.
Uh-oh.
I killed the radio station. I blew the fuse.
Oh, dear.
Not a breaker. We had
fuses in those days.
Blew the fuse, shut the whole radio station down. Then the engineer came down and properly wired in the switches and put everything together to get us back on the air.
But you could call in the evenings or whatever and say, hey, will you play?
I was the guy. I was there. Yeah.
Whatever.
That's what I did.
And I don't know how frantically they were searching for that particular record, or if you just automatically knew where it was at, because...
Well, they were all alphabetized by artist. So if you called up and said you wanted to hear Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings, the only question was, did they file it under P for Paul, M for McCartney, or W for Wings? And so I'd go to the M, and if it wasn't there, then I'd go to the P, and if it wasn't there, then I'd go to the W, and there it is. I found it. And so, we could get them on pretty quick.
Yeah, those were the good old days, because you could actually call and talk to the guy and say, hey, I want to, will you play? Sure.
Yeah.
And they found it immediately. It was like,
Well, now there's a secret to that.
Okay.
All right, most of those phone calls were pre-recorded. So when you called the jock that was a recorded conversation. They would record your conversation. And so you say, hey, I want to hear Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. I'll say, all right, we'll get that on there for you. What's your favorite radio station? And you'd say, KROS or whatever. So then we'd rewind and get that queued up, go find the record.
Yeah.
Put the record on, then we would play back the recording of you requesting the song, and then we would throw it on.
Okay,
You
but
didn't know that, did
if you have the radio on in the room and you can hear yourself talking to the DJ, that's pretty live.
Well, that was
and
live,
they're pretty
too.
fast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about, last week was the last yard of the week.
Yes.
You were telling me you had great response
Oh,
to the
yeah.
other
We
week
had
this year.
18 yards. That was amazing, actually.
Okay.
So
When do
there's
you
still
hope to pick it back up again?
next spring.
Okay.
When yards start getting green and things are blooming, so probably into May.
Okay.
Because that's when stuff really starts to look good.
Okay.
And hopefully we might have some rain. Who knows?
hope so.
Because that was kind of like magic.
Yeah.
Everybody's at least
those-
got green.
Those posts, we had thousands of people
I think
see
that's
those
just
posts
amazing.
and share
Yeah,
those posts.
yeah.
So, yeah, it
That's
was very
great.
popular. So, thank you for sending us those
Oh,
pictures.
yeah. Well, you have a lot more coverage than we do, so, that was good because I told somebody that was for the yard, I said, because I saw him later, and I said, by the way, the radio station had, this, whatever you told me at that time, 3,500 or something.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? You're kidding.
Yeah.
And no, but then we had another yard, and just from the article in the paper and the posts on the radio, we got a thank you note because people had reached out to them, they'd commented, they'd called them, and stopped by and recognized their efforts. And it was an older couple, and it just made them feel wonderful. You know, so they were so pleased with that. So good things happen from things like that.
We'll do that again next spring then.
Yeah, that was a pretty good. We tried it. I don't know, I remember it was last year or year before, and nobody called and nominated anybody, which I thought was kind of strange.
Yeah.
Because we went through the same process.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just nobody cared or whatever, or they just weren't into it at that time, or, who knows.
Right. But I think
it-
this year everybody's doing their best to get back to normal.
Well, and it could be kind of a chain reaction. Well, so-and-so nominated. Well, I can nominate,
That's right. That's right.
Family X or Family Y or Z or what,
Yeah.
So,
Well, good.
it worked good.
Good.
Yes.
Glad we could help.
Yes. And now,
Yes.
composting.
Composting. You've got a seminar coming up.
October 30,
Okay.
10 o'clock in the morning. And this is just a little write-up. Robert Flynn will be teaching the class.
Okay.
Composting is the recycling of organic materials such as vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, which are rich in nitrogen and carbon, tea leaves, less the staple on some diffusions. You peel off the trash.
Okay.
Metal just isn't going to cut it.
Right.
And other similar organics. So all that stuff in your kitchen that you usually throw away, potato peelings, tomato stuff, there's a lot of stuff that really doesn't need to go in your garbage can. So a little composting, then you end up with great organic materials for your flower pots, your garden, whatever. It says there are different methods that can be used based on the number of organics that you might currently be putting in the trash, which is what I just said.
Right.
This class will address different methods of composting, including box, straw bales, and with worms and other bins and methods. So, First United Methodist Church Fellowship Hall, which I was calling the gym, but it's still a gym. So whatever you want to know it by, no charge.
Okay.
We really would like to know if you're coming. Just say, hey, yeah, I'm going to be there.
Okay.
Because we kind of want to know. Because, there's snacks involved and set up, tables and chairs and other assorted things. So
Okay.
it's just, please let us know. And I know years ago there was some interest in composting with some friends that I had or people that knew of us and came to recycle and said, hey, can you And one of the years, the conference had information, and so, I passed out a couple of books.
What day is that again, the 30th?
October 30.
At what time?
Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 in the morning.
So about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And you should be done and out of there, and then you can go do the rest of your Saturday. And, I know there's lots of events and craft shows and functions going on from now until the end of the year.
Can you hang on for just a second?
Sure.
Okay. We've got a few more things we want to cover. Remind everybody on the composting seminar coming up. This is KSVP